If you don't have a mailing list, then you don't have a business. And this sounds kind of extreme, but if you're trying to sell online courses, then it's also kind of accurate. So the longer you wait to get started, the more money you're leaving on the table, which is why in this video, I'm going to show you how to start building your mailing list in a way that's fast and sustainable. Hands down, the biggest mistake that I see people make when they're starting a course selling business is focusing way too much on the course they want to sell and create before they have a mailing list of people that they can actually sell it to. So that's why I'm recording this video for you. Let's dive into it. The benefits of building your mailing list are first and foremost that it gives you a direct line of communication with your audience. So you can go directly to their inbox. It's much easier to build a relationship here. And you're going to be able to ask them for a lot of feedback and input when it comes to actually building and selling your course. And you're actually going to be able to sell to them via email too, which we'll get to in a bit. So you can also use your mailing list to drive traffic to new content across platforms. So you become kind of platform agnostic, so to speak. For example, when I started creating content, I was just posting on my website. So I was just posting text-based articles. But since I built my mailing list up to like a few thousand people, by the time I launched my YouTube channel, I was able to direct all of those people to my new YouTube channel, and it was able to get a lot of traffic pretty instantly. And that way, if you ever do like lose your following on one platform, you still have your mailing list of your most engaged audience members, and you can bring them to other platforms with you. So it gives you security in that sense. And another way to put that is that you own your list. So you don't own your YouTube channel like YouTube does. Same thing is true with any kind of social media or content creation platform, other than maybe your website, like you own your website. But that's the cool thing about owning your mailing list. You can bring that with you from platform to platform just by downloading the list and uploading it to a new platform if you want to switch email providers. You also sell via email. I mentioned this earlier. This has a super high conversion rate, and the people on your mailing list are already your most engaged audience members and your biggest fans, so to speak. So instead of trying to sell on like a LinkedIn feed or a social media feed where maybe one out of every few thousand people will buy, on your mailing list, multiple people will buy out of every 100 people on your mailing list. So yeah, very high conversion rates compared to any kind of social media platform. If you're new to like marketing concepts, like here is an idea of a funnel. So at the top, you'll have short form content. And then as you go down the funnel, like fewer and fewer people make it down. Obviously, I didn't put too much time into this graphic, but hopefully the idea comes across. At the top of the funnel, you have short form content. So maybe like LinkedIn posts or Instagram posts or TikToks, like short form videos. That's going to be seen by a ton of people, but those people probably aren't going to be very loyal to you or may not spend very much time with you. The people who are most engaged by the short form content will likely find their way to your long form content. So the long form content is like YouTube videos or like long form articles or things like that. And then the people who start spending some time with you in your long form content, they're like, hey, I kind of like this stuff. This is helping me. I want more from this creator or this person, so I'm going to subscribe to the mailing list. And we're going to get into different reasons why people might subscribe to your mailing list later on. But this is a very necessary part because from your mailing list is when some of them will go on to become customers or clients. And then beyond that, people become promoters, so they share their experience with other people and refer people back to your programs. Because they had such a good experience with your product or with your service that you offered. So we don't want to skip steps here. We don't want to try to sell to people from a short form video or from a YouTube video. We want to sell to people on the mailing list so that we're not reaching people who aren't already like fans or who you don't know need your product or service to some degree. So we'll get deeper into that. Hopefully that makes enough sense for us to continue. Again, fewer people, like you might have 10,000 views on your short form content, and one or two of those people will make their way all the way down the funnel and become promoters of the course or service that they bought from you. That's how it works. So you need content. This grows your mailing list for you while you sleep and will eventually create sales for you while you sleep. So if you didn't see last week's video about how to create great content, which will be very well suited for building your mailing list, then check out that video first. Remember, these videos are part of like a 10-part plus playlist. So I'm building that out week by week. So make sure you've seen the last ones before diving into building your mailing list. And we're going to share some other strategies to build it if you don't already have existing content, but this evergreen approach will set you up for success for years to come. So to start building your mailing list, you're going to need a tool. I mean, I guess you could kind of collect emails like by asking people what their email address is and keeping it in a spreadsheet, but that is very inefficient and that's not the system we're trying to build here. So here are a few different tools for you to explore. I use a tool called Drip. It's what I've used from the very beginning. But there are other tools like ActiveCampaign, ConvertKit, MailChimp. I'm sure there are dozens more. Just to look up like email automation software if you want to explore more options. I use Drip. That works fine. I think MailChimp and ConvertKit are like the lowest priced offers if you want something really affordable. Maybe even they have free plans to get started with. But the sooner you get set up with a tool and can start collecting email addresses, the better. Also, don't worry too much about what tool you pick because you're going to wind up using other systems later on to collect email addresses. There's a tool called Zapier, if you're not familiar with it already, that can bring data to and from your email automation tool. So if you're collecting an email address in like Typeform, for example, you can just use Zapier to bring that into any of your email automation software. So that's going to become an important part of the process later on. But for now, all you need is an email automation tool like Drip, ConvertKit, ActiveCampaign, or MailChimp. So find one and roll with it. And like I mentioned earlier, you could always change if you want. Like you could always just download your mailing list from one provider and upload it to another. If you've set up other automations and stuff, it might get more complex, but theoretically, it's easy to transfer. Okay, so lead generation. This is at the heart of building your mailing list. The idea here is you provide some type of value in exchange for someone's email address. Once they give you your email address, they become a lead. That's where that terminology comes from. Yeah, if they give you their email, they're a lead, they're probably interested in your paid offers. So that's the idea. You want to attract your intended audience onto your mailing list, and you want to basically attract the people that you can provide the most value to and solve the biggest problems for. So to get started doing this, you can just use the form functionality of your email tool. I'm not going to go too deep into like the technology here, but I just want to let you know, like, yeah, you're going to need some kind of form that people can fill out to put in their email address, and then you can then give them the thing that they're signing up for. So any of the tools I mentioned on the last page will have some kind of forms people can sign up for, and then you can like trigger emails to get sent right after that. So use that to start, but just know that later on you can use more complex tools with a Zapier, like Opt-in Monster, for example, if you want to check out that tool. Okay, so here are some examples of lead gen. So hopefully this makes it more concrete for you. The most simple way to start, the lowest hanging fruit, this is how I started, is an opt-in to stay in the loop or to subscribe to the newsletter or be the first to know. I think that's the language I used for a while on my blog. And the idea there is people would sign up, and then every time I created a new article or a new piece of content, I would email every single person on my list and say, hey, I just created this new video about X, Y, or Z. And a lot of them would check it out, and some people would respond and say thanks. And that's the idea. So people are subscribing just to be the first to know whenever you post something new, just, yeah, for that notification, so to speak. So this isn't going to be the highest opt-in rate, but it is going, like, your biggest fans and people who support you the most will definitely sign up for this. So get started with that type of email as soon as possible if you're creating content, because it will start bringing in leads for little to no effort, just writing an email every time you create something new. Okay. PDFs are very popular lead gens. So ebooks, for example, do really well. If you create an ebook to solve someone's problem, odds are they are going to want to download that. Checklists do really well. Like my most successful lead gen to date was like the Become an Instructional Designer checklist. So my intended audience are people who want to become instructional designers. My most popular content is around becoming an instructional designer. So you can imagine if someone who wants to become an ID is watching a video about how to become an ID, and then there's an option to get a checklist that walks you through step by step how to become an instructional designer, odds are they're going to opt into that. And as such, yeah, it has a very high opt-in rate, much higher than if I were to just say, subscribe to get updates about whenever I create new content. So checklists do really well. White papers or reports, that might work more for a more like professional or corporate audience. Templates work really well too. If you want to give someone a template to save them some time, that is obviously going to be an effective lead gen. And I'm sure you could think of other types of PDFs that would be effective for people. Live events. So this is a way to build your mailing list very, very quickly, especially before your content starts getting a lot of traffic. So we're going to dive deeper into that. And you can start a private community too that people sign up for with their email address and then would be on your mailing list. So for live events, again, you can grow your mailing list really, really fast with live events because everyone who signs up, they sign up with their email address, and then you could presumably email them if they opt in to receive emails from you. So what has grown, like I used this strategy early on and it was really effective, but interviewing people who already have like audiences in your space is a really good way to not only get on more people's radar and like build relationships in your industry, but also a way to build your email list really fast. Like some people that I partnered with in my industry who were like, yeah, really well known, I would grow my mailing list by like 1,000 people in a matter of a week and a half. So very effective strategy. If you have relationships with people who are already known in your space or in your field, definitely partner with them and ask them good questions and put on a good session for people. And publicize your events on social media. So this is a great form of content because you're kind of building your mailing list in relation to the content. So we were talking about that funnel earlier. You can get people onto your mailing list directly from like social media or from shorter form content because the live event doubles as the longer form content and the lead gen. So really effective. There are platforms like Crowdcast or Demio. I loved Demio. Like there's no like lag, so to speak, between your presentation and the chat. So if you're like asking the audience questions, you'll be able to see their questions as soon as they ask them. I used Crowdcast for a while, which is really cool. It sends really good like notifications and everything. But there was like a 60-second delay or at least 30-second delay. So it would be really hard to have like live conversations with the audience. And there are plenty more platforms like that if you want to explore more live event platforms. Okay, and then a community space. So this is where you provide a private space for people in your community to engage. So people who want that social interaction, they want to ask questions, help people, and just build their networks. You can provide a space for that. So this isn't a type of thing where like you just set up the community and then it works for you. Like this one does require a lot of engagement from you, especially to get things started, and set expectations and set the tone and make everyone feel welcome and show how you're going to provide value to people in this space. So it's a lot of work, but it can be a very effective lead gen and just a very effective way to stay connected and stay in front of your audience. So I had a Slack community to start, and this built my mailing list very effectively earlier on. And then I've since moved to Circle, which I think is better suited for communities like this. So those are some examples. If you have questions about any other like potential lead gens, feel free to ask in the comments. The next thing to keep in mind is that you want to tailor your lead gens to the type of content that you're creating. So the more relevant the lead gen is to your content, and when I say lead gen, I mean like the offer you have. Like I'm going to give you this checklist, that's a lead gen, or join the community, that's a lead gen, because it's some type of form that people are filling out to give you their email address in exchange for some type of value or access. So the more relevant your lead gen is, the higher the opt-in rate will be. You know, I gave you that example earlier. If you're on that Become an ID video and the lead gen is directly going to help you become an ID, the opt-in rate is going to be very high. If you're watching like some technical content though on like how to use a specific software, and then I'm telling you, hey, I'll help you become an ID, those people might already be instructional designers. They just want to learn how to use this specific tool. So a lot fewer of those people are going to opt into a lead gen like that. But if I have a lead gen saying, hey, here are all the top keyboard shortcuts in this tool that you're trying to use, and you can download this job aid and keep it next to you to reference, the opt-in rate for that is going to be a lot higher because it's way more relevant to the problem that person is trying to solve with the content they're currently viewing. So I hope that makes sense, but keep that in mind. It can obviously be a lot of work, like creating a new lead gen for every type of content you're creating. But if you notice that a specific piece of your content is becoming a lot more popular than other pieces of content, that's a good sign that you're solving a problem that a lot of people have. So create a lead gen for that to capture more people, because eventually you might want to create a course for that. If your audience is telling you, hey, this is the biggest problem we're having, this is what we need your help with the most. And then you can, of course, direct people to your lead gens. That's really important. You need to drive traffic to these forms so that people can actually sign up for them. So if you're creating YouTube videos, you can link to your forms in the video descriptions and pinned comments. A lot of people do it in like the very first line of your video description, just to make sure people see that offer and have the chance to click on that link and fill out the form. Or if you're using your website primarily, you can actually, there are a lot of different places you can put these lead gens in your website. You can put a banner at the top of your website with your offer. You can embed them throughout your articles. So like you could have your introduction and then that embedded form where people can just put in their email address and sign up for your offer. And you can have like exit pop-ups when people go to like exit your website. There can be a pop-up that says like, hey, you know, get this free PDF or whatever it is. So there are a lot of different ways you can embed these forms on your website. Better if you do both. Like I eventually obviously started creating articles and YouTube videos. And so between the two, it brings in a lot of new leads every month. You can also send qualified leads to these different opt-ins. So, and via DMs. So odds are once I start getting on your content, you're going to be getting a lot of different comments and direct messages. So for example, if I get direct messages from someone saying, hey, I just found your content. I'm trying to become an instructional designer and like your videos are really helping. I'll say, oh, great. Hey, yeah, congrats on committing to the transition. Have you already grabbed the Become an ID checklist, for example? And then I'll link them over to that opt-in form. So yeah, just keep in mind from all of these different places people are coming from, you want to move them into the mailing list because you're going to be able to keep them a lot more informed on the mailing list. And you're eventually going to be able to offer them products and services that may help them achieve their goals more effectively. And then you want to keep your mailing list healthy. Okay. So if you have 100,000 people on your mailing list, but only like a 1% open rate, you're going to be way worse off than someone who has 1,000 people on their mailing list with like a 40 or 50% open rate. So you want to keep your mailing list healthy, especially because a lot of these email tools, they charge you based on how many people are on your list. So you only want people on your list who want to be there, who are engaging with your emails, and who are actually going to want to eventually buy your products and services. So a couple ways to do this are to require double opt-in. So this is where when someone puts in their email address, you basically say, okay, now go and check your email address to confirm or go and check your email inbox to confirm your email address before we then go ahead and give you the lead gen you signed up for. Basically, let's make sure this is a real email address and you actually want to be here. So that helps a lot. And then regular pruning. So every few months, I'll basically delete everyone who's on my mailing list who hasn't opened an email from me in the last 90 days. And I won't just like delete them out of nowhere. I'll basically say, hey, you haven't opened an email from me in 3 months now. If you want to still be on the mailing list, click this button. Otherwise, you'll be deleted within 7 days. So I've done that. I've removed thousands and thousands of people from my list, but there's no point in having people on your list who aren't even reading your emails. So you want to keep it healthy over time. And after that, once you've built your mailing list to a few hundred to 1,500 people or so, it's time to validate and pre-sell your course idea. So this is where you start making money. This is where you actually start producing sales. If you've been following the playlist, yeah, there have been quite a few steps to get here. Like you want to create the good content, which then builds your mailing list for you. I did my first pre-sale around like 1,000 or 1,300 people on my mailing list, and I pre-sold it for around 15K or so. Hopefully this playlist will help you do even better than that, but that's what we're going to get into in the next video. The next video will be all about how to validate your course idea and pre-sell your course to start making sales. So get out there, start building your mailing list. If you want to stay tuned for what's next, then feel free to subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.